We just got 5 brand new official stills from Beyond the Spider-Verse, and each one drops a tiny but juicy clue about what's coming in the highly anticipated finale to the Miles' trilogy. Even though we still know very little about the plot, the cliffhanger ending of Across left fans absolutely starving for answers, and it instantly shot the third film to the top of every must-watch list for 2027. Sony has finally locked in the release date. Beyond the Spider-Verse will hit theaters on 4th June 2027. Yeah, that's a long 2-year wait from now, and it's a bit painful, but there might be a good reason for it. In fact, I've got a little theory about why it's taking so long, and I'll get to that later. The delay isn't because production is falling apart or anything like that. In fact, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller have been very clear about one thing. They're not rushing it. Every time they make a new Spider-Verse, they're trying to push the boundaries further, and if you've seen the first 2 movies, you know they've been doing exactly that. Into the Spider-Verse wasn't just a great animated movie, it was a straight-up game changer. The art style, the frame rate tricks, the comic book aesthetics, it was all revolutionary. It inspired a whole wave of other studios from DreamWorks to Disney to rethink how animated films could look and feel. Suddenly, animation wasn't just for kids, it was stylish, edgy, and totally cinematic. Then came Across, which took everything to the next level. We got deeper character development, crazier action, and an even more ambitious take on the multiverse. Spider-People from every imaginable universe showed up, the drama hit harder, and the stakes felt real. And then we were left with Miles in the most intense situation of his life. Now Beyond has the monumental task of wrapping all of that up. This is the end of the trilogy, and according to Lord and Miller, it's been the hardest one to make, not just creatively, but also technically. Animation has evolved so much, and making something at this scale, with this level of detail and visual ambition is a massive undertaking, especially when you're trying to deliver a worthy conclusion to one of the most beloved Spidey stories ever told. But let's circle back to that release date for a second. Why 2027? I don't think they're just perfecting the visuals or finishing the story. I think they might be reworking things in a way that expands the Spider-Verse even further. Maybe they're planning a soft reset or a lead-in to new spin-offs. Maybe Gwen's arc is getting more depth, or maybe Miles' story doesn't end here, and they're figuring out how to transition to something even bigger. Because if the final movie sticks the landing, Beyond could end up being not just a satisfying conclusion, but a new benchmark for what animated superhero films can be. One thing that people often underestimate is just how much work goes into animation like this, especially when every single universe in the Spider-Verse films is visually unique. We're not just talking about a new background here or a fresh coat of paint. Each reality is its own full-blown visuals with its own rules, tone, and aesthetic, and to pull that off, it takes an army. We're talking new artists and designers, sometimes even entire new teams. Think back to how Penny Parker looked in Into the Spider-Verse. Her whole vibe was anime-inspired, totally distinct from everything else on screen. Or Spider-Noir, styled like a black and white detective straight out of the 30s. The contrast between styles wasn't just cool, it was intentional, and it made every world feel alive. Across doubled down on that idea, expanding the visual palette even more. And judging by the new stills from Beyond, it looks like the third film is going to take that concept to a whole new level. In one of the new images, we see Miles standing next to Gwen, and from the look of the background, it seems like they're in Hobie Brown's Earth. You can spot the details, a gritty guitar, the silhouette of Big Ben, and that cut-and-paste DIY zine-style animation that screams punk rebellion. The textures look like they were ripped right out of collage art and protest posters. If you remember, Hobie himself was basically a living art piece, made out of ripped up newspapers, graffiti scribbles, and chaotic outlines. So it seems like in this next chapter, we'll be diving deeper into that punk reality, and maybe we'll get Hobie's origin story on how he became Spider-Punk, why his ideology is so different from the rest of the Spider People. But it's also possible that the story won't linger there for long, and we'll be thrown straight into the main conflict, Miles versus the Spot and his desperate mission to save his dad. Miles standing in the foreground with Gwen behind him, and if you break down the body language, it looks like she's trying to talk him down, maybe convince him to give up or at least back off. If you remember, by the end of Across, Gwen had managed to change her own story. Her dad didn't become captain, which meant he didn't die, and that broke what Miguel had described as a canon event, like the death of a police captain have to happen to preserve the multiverse. But Gwen's timeline broke that rule, and her dad lived. Now she's telling Miles he might be able to do the same. If Jeff Davis never becomes a Cap, he might not have to die, and that flips the entire premise on its head. Miles's mission isn't just about beating the Spot anymore, it's about breaking the canon itself to save his dad. It's likely Beyond will pick up right where we left off, with Miles trapped in Earth 42, face to face with his darker variant, the one who became the Prowler. From the looks of the additional stills, the opening scenes will dive straight into that fight. The movie will probably kick off with that confrontation, OG Miles versus the Prowler Miles. It's clear from stills that OG Miles will escape eventually. That's not really a spoiler, just an inevitability, but what we don't know is how that interaction changes him, or how things will evolve between him and the Prowler version. Will they end up allies, or will their paths split for good? There's so much we still don't know. It looks like the fight between the two Miles is definitely happening. In this image, we see Spidey pinned to a wall, seemingly dodging an attack, back, most likely from the Prowler's claws. The setting looks familiar, a gym-like penthouse, the same place where Miles was trapped at the end of Across. In the background, you can spot dumbbells, barbells, and other equipment. It could very well be Aaron Davis's basement, an improvised prison and arena for their fight, but don't expect that fight to go on long. This sequence probably takes up the first 10 to 15 minutes. It sets the tone, raises the stakes, but it's not a big arc. Now here's where things get interesting. One likely outcome is that the Prowler doesn't join the main Spider people, but maybe he lets original Miles go. Maybe he stays a reluctant anti-hero, but then, later, maybe during a key twist, he shows up again, maybe to help Team Gwen, or maybe to cross paths with a version of his parents from another universe. We're getting into theory territory here, but that's half the fun. And all of this ties back to one of the biggest pieces of setup from the entire trilogy, the Chekhov's gun. The spider that bit the original Miles came from Earth 42. If that spider had done what it was supposed to do, evil Miles would have become Spider-Man, and that changes everything. Earth 42's New York wouldn't be the crime-ridden Gotham-esque nightmare it is now. Jeff Davis might still be alive, but instead, with no Spider-Man, the city fell under the grip of the sinister cartel. So Miles grew up under the influence of crime and his uncle, Aaron Davis. In another scene, we get a striking shot of the Prowler himself, striking a battle stance. This one's stylized with intense light flares and a darkened background. It's unclear when or where this moment is happening. It could be part of the first fight, a flashback, or even a scene from the third act. It could also just be a concept or a visual stop frame that doesn't make it into the final cut. After all, with 2 more years until release, Sony is known for making significant changes right up until the movie drops. If you remember, Across had a completely different look for Miguel in its early teasers, so it's not impossible that these shots we're seeing now are just placeholders that could be revamped by the time the movie is finished, especially considering the rumors of a tense atmosphere at Sony Animation. Some key staff members reportedly left the project due to burnout, with insiders suggesting that Lord and Miller may have reworked certain scenes dozens of times to get them just right. And then there's this interesting theory about the release timing. By 2027, we'll also have new Avengers and a Spider-Man Brand New Day with Tom Holland. These movies are definitely going to dive into multiverse, so it's entirely possible they'll connect in some way to Spider-Verse. After all, we've seen this before. Across featured a live-action Prowler played by Donald Glover. Could Sony integrate Oscar Isaac's Miguel and Shameik Moore's Miles into a live-action Marvel project somehow? It's definitely possible, but personally, I think Spider-Verse should stay its own thing. It's a self-contained story, unique in its style and execution. Honestly, the last thing I want is for Sony to take the easy route and shoehorn in Tom, Toby, or Andrew for a cash grab in the finale. What we need is an ending that honors this animated trilogy. No fan service for the sake of fan service. Just a strong, logical conclusion to one of the best trilogies of the decade. But with all these new scenes coming together, one thing's for sure. Beyond is shaping up to be a wild, emotional, and visually stunning finale. Whether you're here for the multiverse madness, the character arcs, or just the insane animation, it looks like we're in for something truly special.